During the election campaign and then outside Downing Street, Keir Starmer said time and again, we will return politics to the service of the people. What part of returning politics to the service of the people involves accepting free outfits?
Well, first of all, MPs have accepted donations and gifts for years. All MPs do it. And what we talked about is making sure that we're open and transparent about that. And that was why the Prime Minister made sure that he corrected the record when he was advised that he needed to do that. He actively pursued that and took that advice, and I think that's the right thing to do. And we want to make sure that the government are transparent. But gifts and donations have been a factor in our political life for some time. We could have a debate about that. You know, I was from a very working class background. To stand as deputy leader, as you say, to get that position.
Laura Kuenssberg's recent live interview with Angela Rayner was a real shock, vividly demonstrating contradictions, incorrect assessments, and obvious unpreparedness. This event turned into something more than just an awkward political exchange of opinions. It became a moment that made viewers deeply doubt the authority of one of the most influential figures in the Labour Party. Politics, at its core, should be on the side of the people. But this interview raised troubling and painful questions about how public perception and accountability relate to this important idea. Angela Rayner's decision to accept housing from a wealthy donor, regardless of their personal connections, has been the subject of close and critical analysis. Kuenssberg was not shy about openly pointing out the contradictions in the actions of Rayner and the Labour Party, which proudly declared its commitment to transparency. This interview has become a real test for the Labour Party, and its consequences can have a serious impact on their future.
I had to accept donations in order for me to run the campaign, because it's a very expensive way of doing our politics. And what Keir was saying, in particular around some of the donations that so he could see the football and security, is that shouldn't land on taxpayers. We're very clear on that, but we have to have transparency in the system.
But the rules are the rules. The perception is a different thing. What part of returning politics to the service of the people involved you accepting a free stay in a New York apartment on a holiday?
Well, first of all, I was on holiday in New York. I paid for my holiday in New York, but as friends do, a friend allowed me to stay. I often allow people to stay at mine. But what I felt, and I went beyond the rules, is because that person had donated to my deputy leadership, who happens to be a friend but is a politician in their own right, I felt I should declare it, and I did declare it.
Rayner tried to justify her stay at the donor's luxury apartment in New York, claiming that it was just a personal vacation and that she made such a decision as a precautionary measure. But Kuenssberg didn't give her a chance, insisting that such actions contradict Labour's promise to return politics to the people. The public perception of this decision, when a political leader accepts privileges from a donor, undermines the idea of honesty and accountability on which trust in the Labour Party is based. The discussion soon turned to the Labour Party's housing policy and revealed even more inconsistencies. The ambitious promise to build 1.5 million homes was in shocking contrast to the expected arrival of 2.5 million immigrants over the same period. When Rayner was asked how these numbers correlate, she was confused about her answers. On the one hand, she claimed that there was plenty of housing in the country, and on the other she emphasized the existing housing crisis. All this caused the audience to have deep doubts about the sequence of actions of the Labour Party on key issues, leaving them perplexed and disappointed.
You yourself said, we need to know what these donors were promised or expected in return for their generosity. That was you saying that.
Yeah, and we saw, and Laura, we saw that VIP fast lanes on taxpayers' money, billions of pounds wasted during the COVID pandemic. These are individual donations. Nobody's been given billions of pounds contracts, millions of pounds contracts as a result. That's the distinction for me, is that people were given jobs in executive roles. People were given, you know, contracts worth billions of pounds when we didn't actually see the benefits of that.
I think
that was the distinction for me. But the transparency, you're absolutely right, and I absolutely believe the public want that.
Rayner's failure to develop a clear and coherent position on the housing issue has exposed deeper and more troubling issues within the party. Poor communication and inconsistency in politics are not just strategic mistakes, but real symptoms of serious internal conflicts that threaten the foundations of trust in the Labour Party. Labour's drive to articulate a clear vision may alienate voters who are desperate for real and workable solutions. A housing crisis or a surplus of real estate is an issue that requires immediate and serious attention. Let's look at the numbers for a moment. The Labour Party plans to build 1.5 million new homes during this parliamentary term. This is indeed an ambitious goal, but alas, no one in the industry believes in achieving it. Nevertheless, it's good to set high goals, but where are the concrete steps to achieve them? However, Rayner wasn't the only one who found herself under scrutiny. The interview also had a negative impact on the reputation of the party's leader, Keir Starmer. He is often accused of not understanding public sentiment, and his public appearances, such as being photographed in the corporate box at a football match, only reinforce this impression, creating a sense of detachment from reality.
But you were accepting accommodation from a wealthy Labour donor, whether they were a friend or not. What part of that do you think looks acceptable to people watching this morning?
I think the important thing is, somebody allowed me to stay at their apartment for a few days. I decided to declare that because that person is a politician, happens to be a friend, and I stayed there for a couple of days. I felt it was important that people knew that I'd used the apartment. I don't think that's unusual. People do, stay at other people's apartments. I think it was right and proper that the people could see that relationship and could see that I'd used that apartment. And I think that's the important thing for me, is people need to know where those donations are coming from.
The current problems of the Labour Party are not just superficial difficulties. It is a real catastrophe that threatens the very future of the party. The Labour Party is facing a serious dilemma. How can they unite their disparate internal factions and at the same time develop a coherent and convincing vision for the country? This issue goes far beyond image or public relations. If internal disagreements are not resolved, the Labour Party risks forever remaining fragmented and mired in contradictions, which could cost them the trust of voters. Internal divisions within the Labour Party pose a serious obstacle to its success. These conflicts manifest themselves not only in disputes about specific policies, but also in broader ideological battles that tear the party apart from within. One faction insists on bold and radical reforms, while the other is drawn towards centrist and pragmatic approaches. As a result, the party is struggling to present a unified position on the most important issues, and this causes voters to feel disappointed and dissatisfied. The longer the Labour Party remains fragmented, the more indecisive and incapable of effectively leading the country they look, losing the opportunity to become the real leaders that the nation so badly needs.
I've reflected on my donations. I've been very transparent about the donations that I had. I stayed at someone's apartment. It wasn't that I had the luxury
and
holiday.
we've talked about that.
And I did that and I disclosed it. In terms of the donation that I had from a clothing company, again, I put that out in the public domain and made sure that people understood that that's where I'd got that clothing from. And I get that people are frustrated, in particular the circumstances that we're in. Yeah. But donations for gifts and hospitality and, monetary donations have been a feature of our politics for a very long time.
In a recent interview with BBC correspondent Kuenssberg, internal conflicts in the party came into focus, and this was a real revelation. Kuenssberg didn't just point out individual mistakes. She boldly focused on the more serious consequences of Labour's actions, expertly using each issue to delve deeper into the contradictions tearing the party apart. This approach not only captured the audience's attention, but also gave the conversation an incredible edge. It made it each new question became like a new clue, bringing the audience back to the key topic. Can the Labour Party really fulfill its promises, or are they too mired in internal disagreements and lack of leadership? During the interview, it became abundantly clear that Kuenssberg was not just questioning Labour's tactical leadership, but also exploring the broader picture that the party was trying to present to the public. The audience began to ask an alarming question. Is the Labour Party capable of offering a strong and unified vision of the country's development, or is it too divided to effectively oppose the Conservatives? This created an atmosphere of tension and expectation, forcing viewers to think about the future, which could be in jeopardy.
14 years of Tory chaos has not just left its mark on people's jobs, but on homes too. Not enough are being built. The Tories failed to meet their targets year after year after year. Michael Gove handed back nearly £2 billion to the Treasury in unspent housing funds. Mortgages have soared. Leaseholders are left at the mercy of eye-watering charges. Renters face crippling hikes in damp and mouldy homes. And homelessness is all around us. The simple aspiration of a safe, secure and affordable home is further out of reach than ever. And we can't go on like this. So change must be begin at home. We're tackling the Tories' housing emergency. We will get Britain building, and building decent homes for working people.
The constant references to Labour's internal squabbles create the depressing impression that the party is in deep crisis, and it is becoming increasingly difficult for voters to take the opposition seriously. This is especially striking against the background of Conservatives, who, despite their own shortcomings, demonstrate a more consistent position, even if it is contradictory. Moreover, the interview raised the troubling issue of growing disillusionment among voters, who increasingly feel disconnected from the political elite. Many of them are convinced that politicians are more concerned about their personal image and appearance than about real changes that could benefit society. Rayner's actions, intentional or not, only reinforce this discontent, creating the feeling that the leadership of the Labour Party completely ignores the needs and concerns of ordinary people. What do you think about this video? Share your thoughts in the comments. See you later.